Hey guys, today's video, I'm so excited. I'm getting ready to chop my Adansonii pole. I'm doing it. I'm gonna film the entire process and I'm scared. I'm really nervous. I want to get this guy onto metal or slowly transition him from plastic to metal. And I haven't seen that done before that I know of, and I don't know how I'm gonna do it yet. That's the plan today, and yeah, I don't know. I'm just really nervous. So I'm going to kind of show you my setup here and kind of my plan, and yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy this video. So as you can see, my Monstera Adansonii has reached the top. The last set of roots, it looks like, are growing are right here. So I do have a little bit of room left, but he's already like extending above. So I'm gonna go ahead and chop him. And you can see the pole is plastic, and I want to transition him off and get him onto the metal pole right down there. I have 3 main vines, and I'm looking to cut like where this bare spot is right here. I'm looking to cut like right in this area, because this includes all 3 vines, and hopefully when I cut, there's enough root system that will support the chop and I can continue letting him grow. I have extended the pole once, like right here, so I'm thinking about cutting like this area, because you can see all these aerial roots here that have attached into the moss. So I'm hoping it'll have enough root system to support a chop, and I'll talk more about that as well. And there's like some roots here you can see. So I'm thinking if I chop at this level, it's still like, I still have a lot of the plant left, but it'll get rid of this bottom half, and I'll probably have to be extending this guy very soon. So just to touch, I actually have my phone again. I have some questions that came up that I want to try and answer in this video, because I asked, my Instagram knows that I'm getting ready to chop this guy, and I just wanted to talk more about chopping. So someone is asking the best way to root the top pole cutting. And so the reason behind chopping a pole is when you cut the pole, the top half should have enough root system inside of the moss to support itself without needing the bottom half that's actually planted into the soil. Because if you think of all the roots that have grown into the moss is a different substrate, just like soil, leca. You kind of like get rid of some of that bottom layer of moss and pole, and so you have a little bit of roots that you can actually plant into the pot and let those continue growing into the soil while the rest of the plant continues growing into the moss. And once you extend on top, hopefully the plant doesn't get shocked and will continue pushing out larger leaves. That is the goal anyway. I had some other questions about where I get my supplies and how I make my poles, which I've gone over this a lot, I feel like, but if you're new and you don't know, then I'll link my moss pole playlist. I have an old tutorial on how I made my plastic poles, but I don't unfortunately have one where I am using the metal. It's pretty much the same process, except you have to use wire cutters to cut the metal, but it's pretty much the same process. You just, you know, make the pole according to the size that you want. I use a standard 3-foot pole, and it's like the same process as far as zip tying it and adding the moss and everything in. And all my supplies, I will link my moss pole supplies down in the description as well, and I'll link the playlist up here for you guys. And I had some questions about like watering poles without overwatering your plant. And I talked about this in my moss pole care video that was in that playlist, but the goal is to have your mix, your base in the pot like really, really, really chunky, so that you don't risk overwatering. Because when you water the pole from the top, it saturates the moss, but any extra water will drip into the soil base itself. Sometimes I will water more than I should over top. And so it's really important to have a free flowing mix so that any water can drain into the drip pan, like the extra pot or tray that you have it on, so you can just dump out the extra water. So if your moss pole is sitting in like a heavy ceramic, you don't want that ceramic to be filled with water, and because it's just going to rot out your roots that are in the base of that soil. So it's really important to, first of all, have a really, really, really chunky mix so that when you water, you're not going to overwater. You dump all the excess water out. So those are the 2 most important things. Someone else had asked about trying a PVC pipe and wicking rope for your moss poles, and they were curious about it. I honestly have no desire, because a PVC pole or pipe in the middle of your pole, that is taking up room to where your moss pole roots would grow. And I think constantly keeping your moss poles moist is not a good idea, because mine dry out, and it's important to let them get to some state of dryness, because constant wet environment, you know, is just going to introduce mold, bacterial growth, and it's just like risking overwatering. So that's why I don't really care for like a wicking system. I just don't want my pole and moss to be completely moist all the time. And when you chop and extend, it's going to be really hard to do that with a PVC pipe in the middle of your pole. You don't really think about that at first, but when you're chopping a pole in half, there's not really a way to do that with a PVC pole inside. And I don't think there's any way for a wick system to work for a really, really tall pole, in my opinion. I honestly just don't see the idea behind that, and so I don't think it's going to work. So I'm not even interested in trying it out to see, because I just don't want anything in the moss except for the moss and the plant roots. So that's my idea behind that. And then I think the only other thing that was asked was, how do you make the top look good after the chop? And that's just going to depend on the plant itself. I haven't chopped before, so I don't know how this is going to turn out, and I'll definitely keep you updated. I'm hoping the plant continues to grow as it normally would, and that it has enough roots that when I chop, it won't go into shock. And I'm going to water with Super Thrive to also help reduce any shock that the plant might go through. And I'm just going to try and keep the pole moist with occasional drying out, and just care for it how I normally do. Keep it in good light to encourage growth, and continue fertilizing when I water, and hopefully that will encourage the plant to grow like it normally would. So yeah, and another question, I think they were talking about the pot size, and I generally just use a standard 6-inch. I am out of my standard 6-inch clear pots, so I have some 6.7-inch pots I'm going to use. They're a little bit bigger, but it'll be okay. And I'm going to make the soil really, really chunky. But in general, most of the root system is in the moss itself, and you're going to be chopping and extending so much that you really don't need a large pot for the base of the plant. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to touch on as far as moss pole content and my idea behind chopping and extending. And any questions you guys have at all, feel free to ask. I think I'm just going to focus on chopping it. I will set this up to record so you guys can see what I'm doing, and I will bring the plant closer to the camera and kind of touch on things that I did, I think, and my idea behind what I did, so that you guys can get an idea. So yeah, let's get to chopping this plant. I want you guys to be able to sort of see what I'm doing, but I don't know if you guys can see. But so basically, once I cut this pole, I need to repot it right away. So I'm going to get my mix ready to go. And before I actually chop it, I'm going to go ahead and cut the stems, because when I plant the bottom half into the soil, I don't want the stems to be freshly cut. I want to give them like an hour to callus, or like 20-30 minutes or so to callus over before I pot them into a new pot. I have cleaned my shears, and I'm gonna move this closer so you guys can see a little bit. So since I have a root system here, I'm gonna cut on the stem here, just like that. I'm gonna chop this middle vine right here. That is chopped. This part has like a root growing down into the moss a little bit, so I'm gonna cut right below that. There. All 3 stems have been cut, so this is gonna be my top half. So while these are callusing, I'm going to get my mix ready to go. All right, so I just want to show you. So this is roughly what my mix is going to look like. It's very chunky and airy. It really doesn't have to be exact, you know. You just want something that when you water, the water is going to drain straight through. And then this probably won't be enough, so I'll have to mix a little bit more up. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I need to remove this stake. I have a garden stake on the back of this pole, this green stake, and I need to remove that in order to chop the pole. And I have it zip tied on, so I'm going to get my scissors and cut those. And I also have like plant Velcro around the plant, and I really don't need the Velcro anymore either, so I'm going to be getting rid of all the Velcro. So what I'm going to do is, so where I cut the vines, I'm going to be cutting the pole. So I have extended this pole once right here, and so I'm going to basically just take this extension off. So I'm going to cut the zip ties that I have securing the top half of the pole to the bottom half. I'm going to cut those off all the way around, and then I'll be able to lift this entire section off. It's done. Look, you guys, I cut it. Oh, I'm gonna cry. Oh no. But you can see some roots in that moss. So it should plant up okay. That's what I'm hoping. Oh no. Look, my pole's cut in half. Okay, time out. I gotta do a post for Instagram real quick. Okay, I'm back. I had to take some photos for Instagram. So I don't want my roots to dry out, so I need to pot this plant up right away. So this is the bottom half that I chopped. So I think what I'm gonna do for this is, instead of extending on top, I think I'm just going to propagate this plant and put some fresh cuttings on a pole and start over with this bottom half, because I just don't like the way that it has grown. And then with this bare spot, I just don't want to extend on top of this since it's already plastic. So I'm going to propagate this plant up entirely and put some cuttings on a fresh pole of this one. And so this is my top half. Look at it. Oh my goodness. So you can see roots here on the moss. So what I'm going to do, so I want to add on top, but I want to add metal on top. So I think my plan is what I think I'm gonna do. So this is my metal pole that I made the other day, and I left part of the bottom bare because I think I'm going to enclose this bottom half and sit the plastic inside. I don't know if that makes any sense, and have this top half be the extension. Because if I just put metal on top of this plastic, it's going to be way too top heavy and it won't stand up. So if I encase the pole with this metal around the plastic at the bottom, if I encase it, it's going to be more steady. It won't give me very much room for an extension, so I can add on top of this one more time. And then eventually I will cut this again, and I think I can get this plant to grow up the metal or transfer it. So I don't know if that makes any sense. So I need to remove more of this moss, I think. So I'm just going to work and do this, and I will leave this on record and I'll edit out some bits, and then I will show you up close at the end here what I did and my thought process behind it, because it's really hard to film what I'm doing when I don't really know what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm just going to do it and we'll see what happens. I'm going to plant this bottom half in the pot with soil. So I'm going to remove the moss out of the bottom part of this pole. I'm just going to remove the chunk of it. So that way when I pot this in the soil, I will probably have that much in the pot with soil. So I need to remove that much moss out of here. So hopefully this is better. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit. And I'm not going to worry about taking all the moss off the roots because it'll eventually break down in the soil. So I'm just going to pluck away some of this that's on the inside, because when I pot up, I want there not to be as much moss inside. Removing some of these bottom leaves that I don't need. Since this is taking me a while to get this moss out of here, I'm going to just pause the camera so that it doesn't overheat. And I want to just work on getting the moss out of the bottom part of this pole. I just don't want to rush because I feel like I'm going to break roots. I did just break a root off. So I'm just going to take my time and carefully remove the moss out of here. And then I'll start it back up once that's done. This is what I ended up doing. So you can see all the roots that are in the bottom part of this pole. I removed moss up to about here. And so this entire root system is what's going to be planted in the soil. And so it has so many roots that have grown into the moss. And so hopefully this plant won't go into shock and these will just continue growing into the soil. That's why it's important to keep your substrate moist so that the roots can grow into the moss, and it's important to fertilize these roots because they're just as important as soil roots. And I was honestly surprised by how many roots were inside of that moss, so it's quite a bit that was in there. So yeah, this is the bottom half of my pole now. And then I'm going to fill this bottom part up with my soil mix. That's going to go into the pot. But first, I need to figure out how I'm going to encapsulate this pole with the metal. That is what I am unsure of. I think I need to undo one of these. Oh, you know what? I can chop part of this top. Oh, I didn't think about that, where the roots aren't in. Yes, I can chop part of this top off. That'll give me more room to work with. Sort of wish I had extended him sooner so I could get him off of this plastic. You know, I didn't think about this when I go to water this pole. I don't know how well this is going to work. So what I need to do is I need to somehow bend this last little bit of wire. I'm gonna go with it. So what I have done, if you guys can see, so I've kind of encapsulated the metal around the plastic. I bent the ends in, and so this is where it meets here in the middle. And I'll show you at the end. And so I think it's gonna be really hard to try and water this pole. And then I will just extend on top of this one, like a small extension. And then once this grows and attaches, then I will get rid of the plastic part down here. I think that's the plan. I am going to zip tie this part together. Yes, my love, what you want? What? Not right now, maybe later, okay? Okay, so that is zip tied on. So I have encapsulated that. And I think with the stake on the back, it will fit. So I'm gonna fill the bottom part of this pole with my substrate and then get this guy potted up. All right, so he is down into the pot. So I have filled the bottom part of my pole with the soil mix, and I'm just gonna fill up with soil around. And then I will add my stake in last. Didn't realize the camera wasn't picking that up. So I just put a stake in the back and then I'm gonna zip tie it to the pole. I filled the pot all the way up with soil. It looks crazy, I'm not gonna lie. And it's not really that steady, not as steady as I want it to be. All right, I'm really impressed with what I did here, I'm not gonna lie. It's gonna be interesting watering this pole. I'm probably gonna have to water this guy differently, but I can say that I'm happy with what I've done. And I hope it continues growing okay for me. So here is the new pole. Look at how gorgeous it is. So what I did, so I mixed some Super Thrive in my watering can there. And I just watered the base of the pot. I watered the entire soil mix because I wanted it to get saturated, because those roots that are in the soil are basically off the pole. Oh my gosh. Those roots are going to be fresh and very sensitive since I uncovered them from the moss. So I just wanted them to get fully saturated. You can see where I've enclosed the metal around the plastic on the inside there. And so that's where the rest of the moss continues on the metal all the way up. And so I have that much room, and then I'm going to extend a little bit on top of that once this guy reaches the top. And then my goal is to chop again right here to get rid of the rest of the plastic. So I think that's going to be the only tricky part, is watering this pole, but it seems to be a fast grower. I think I'm going to be okay with it temporarily. And I just love the look of it now. It's like full and bushy, like I love. And I have a vine on this side, and then I have a vine over here, and they'll eventually grow up. And then I think, you know, having 3 vines will look nicer rather than just 1 vine. I don't know, that's the thought process behind it. And you can see the new aerial roots there that will hopefully dig into the moss on the new part of the pole. And then that's where I plan on chopping again, like here, as it grows. So that is the plan. So it is drinking. I think it's pretty much done. So I'm going to empty this out, and yeah, that'll be the new pole. I'm really excited for it. You guys, I cannot contain my excitement. I'm just so excited. I cannot believe that it's finally done and chopped. And yeah, let me show you what else I did with the bottom half, because I completely cut everything back. A lot of the nodes on the bottom half were done such a long time ago that they never really attached into the moss. So I cut them up individually, and I made a separate pole with some, and some had a little bit of roots in the moss, so I planted those in a separate pot with a pole, and the other ones I'm going to just propagate in water, and I might just make like a trailing basket or something. So let me show you what I did. All right, you guys, look at this. I really hope it doesn't go into too much shock, since I completely took away the base. Like, the base is gone. It has no more roots, but it had a pretty significant amount of roots in the bottom part of that pole that you saw, and hopefully it will continue growing and pushing out big leaves, and I didn't stress it too much. So thank you guys so much for watching me repot this guy and chop him. I cannot wait to see this plant grow. As soon as I get a new leaf and it's stable and it doesn't go into shock and yellow, I'm just gonna be thrilled that I knew it was successful and that I can do it. Because I'm gonna have to do the same thing to my golden pot, or no, my marble queen that I put on a pole, because it's on plastic and I wanna get it off of plastic. So I'm gonna have to do the same thing when the time comes with that one. Yes, thank you guys so much for watching me. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll definitely do updates on this guy. I'm just so excited. So thank you again so much for watching. I hope this video was not too chaotic and you got to see and learn something from this footage. And yes, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you all very soon.